Hello and welcome to Pinchu TV. The Pinchu TV creator is busy, so this episode is once again being presented by a substitute narrator reading the prepared script. This episode uses AI-generated narration created with ElevenLabs. Today we are reviewing 7 Asian equity markets during the week from Monday the 17th to Friday the 21st of August 2026. Hong Kong led the group with a gain of 3.55%. Vietnam and Indonesia also advanced, while the Philippines and Singapore fell by nearly 1%. 5 of the 7 markets rose and 2 declined. The main subject of this episode is the weekly performance of the regional equity markets. I will mention my Philippine stock account only briefly as a personal perspective on holding shares through the week. This program is market commentary, not a recommendation to buy or sell any financial product. Let us begin with the 7 market ranking. The 7 market ranking. In first place, Hong Kong. The Hang Seng Index gained 3.55%. Second, Vietnam. The VN Index rose 2.26%. Third, Indonesia. The Jakarta Composite Index gained 1.93%. Fourth, Malaysia. The FTSE Bursa Malaysia KLCI rose 0.53%. Fifth, Thailand. The SETI Index gained 0.29%. Sixth, the Philippines. The PSEi fell 0.93%. And seventh, Singapore. The Straits Times Index declined 0.95%. The week did not produce one uniform direction across Asia. Hong Kong rose in all 5 sessions. Vietnam's weekly advance was driven largely by a sharp move on Friday. The Philippines rebounded strongly on Thursday, but still finished the shortened week lower. Singapore also failed to recover to its previous Friday's level. Philippines. A Thursday rebound did not erase the weekly loss. The Philippines Stock Exchange Index moved from 6,297.30 on the 14th of August to 6,238.46 on Thursday the 20th. That was a decline of 58.84 points, or 0.93%. The index closed at 6,261.80 on Monday. It edged up to 6,264.70 on Tuesday. On Wednesday, it fell 1.70% to 6,158.34. Thursday then brought an 80.12-point rebound, equal to 1.30%. The recovery was substantial, but it did not return the index to the previous Friday's close. Market breadth improved on Thursday. PSE Edge recorded 113 advances, 67 decliners, and 66 unchanged shares. The services index rose 2.61%, while mining and oil gained 5.04%. The Philippine market was closed on Friday the 21st for Ninoy Aquino Day. Its weekly end point is therefore the Thursday close. The Philippine Peso, equities and the currency both weakened. The peso also weakened over the week. The Bangko Sentral and Pilipinas reference rate moved from 61.289 pesos per US dollar on the 14th of August to 61.866 on the 20th. A higher US dollar to peso rate means a weaker peso. The depreciation was approximately 0.94%. The PSEi therefore fell 0.93%, while the peso weakened by roughly 0.94% against the US dollar. The movements were remarkably similar in size. That does not prove that one caused the other. Equities and currencies are separate markets, so the observed moves should be distinguished from any interpretation of their causes. Hong Kong. 5 consecutive gains. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index rose from 25,116.85 to 26,009.46. That was a weekly gain of 3.55%. The index rose 1.34% on Monday. It posted smaller gains on Tuesday and Wednesday, rose 0.80% on Thursday, and added 1.21% on Friday. It advanced in all 5 sessions and returned above the 26,000 level. Hong Kong's lead was therefore not the result of one isolated surge. The gains continued throughout the week. Price action alone does not identify one definitive cause. but the 5-day sequence is clear. Vietnam, Friday drives. Most of the weekly advance, Vietnam's VN index rose from 1,729.08 to 1,768.12. That was a weekly gain of 2.26%. From Monday to Thursday, the index remained in a narrow range between roughly 1,727 and 1,734. On Friday, however, it jumped 33.88 points, or 1.95%. That one session accounted for most of the week's 39.04-point advance. BSC Securities reported that 16 of 18 sectors rose on Friday. Foreign investors became net buyers on the Ho Chi Minh Stock Exchange after 6 consecutive net selling sessions. It was a broad positive session, but one day is not enough to establish a lasting reversal in foreign flows. The next question is whether the buying continues. Indonesia. The JCI rises as Bank Indonesia holds. Indonesia's Jakarta Composite Index rose from 6,401.89 to 6,525.69. That was a gain of 1.93%. At its meeting on the 18th and 19th of August, Bank Indonesia kept the BI rate at 5.75%. The deposit facility rate remained at 4.75%, while the lending facility rate remained at 6.50%. The central bank cited rupiah stability amid elevated global volatility, its inflation objective and sustainable economic growth. The unchanged policy rate and the equity gain occurred in the same week. Timing alone, however, does not prove that the rate decision was the sole cause of the market's rise. Malaysia, Thailand and Singapore, Malaysia's FTSE Bursa, Malaysia KLCI, gained 0.53%. Malaysia's Consumer Price Index rose 1.8% from a year earlier in July, slowing slightly from 1.9% in June. Thailand's SET Index gained 0.29%. It rose 1.08% on Monday, but surrendered most of that advance later in the week. Thailand's economy grew 1.9% year-on-year in the second quarter, down from 2.8% in the first quarter. Singapore was the weakest of the 7 markets. The Straits Times Index fell from 5,743.59 to 5,688.96. That was a weekly decline of 0.95%. The index rose on Monday, fell 1.16% on Tuesday, and did not fully recover by Friday. Before looking ahead, here is one short personal observation from holding Philippine shares through the week. Assuming no change in the number of shares held, the closing price movements from the 14th to the 20th of August produced an estimated return of 0.04% for my Philippine stock account. That was nearly flat and better than the PSEi's decline, but the account remains 11.85% below cost since purchase. It did not feel like a profitable week. Thursday's rebound simply prevented the account from losing much more. I am not publishing the individual holdings, position sizes, or company-level gains and losses. One reason I continue investing in the Philippines is my longer-term aim of eventually applying for the Special Investors Resident Visa, or SIRV. That is personal context, not an explanation for the market's weekly movement. The main Philippine event is the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Monetary Policy Meeting on Thursday the 27th of August. The current policy rate is 4.75%. The decision matters, but so does the BSP's assessment of inflation and the peso. On Friday the 28th, the BSP is scheduled to publish July data on domestic liquidity and bank lending. In Vietnam, the key question is whether Friday's broad rally and the return to foreign net buying continue beyond one session. In Hong Kong, the focus is whether the index can hold above 26,000 after 5 consecutive gains. In the Philippines, the PSEi and the Peso should be watched separately after the policy decision. Equities and the currency do not have to move in the same direction. Let us finish with the week in 3 points. First, Hong Kong led with a 3.55% gain and rose in all 5 sessions. Second, Vietnam and Indonesia also advanced, and 5 of the 7 markets finished higher. Third, the Philippines fell 0.93%, while Singapore declined 0.95%. The Philippine Peso also weakened by approximately 0.94% against the US dollar. Thank you for listening to Pinchu TV. I will see you in the next episode.